Peter Dutton and the Liberals lost in a landslide on Saturday night. Why did they lose, and what do they need to do now in order to make sure they can become government again? And that's today on The Dr. Jo Show. Before we jump into the video today, can you please make sure that you hit the subscribe button if you're new to this channel? The more people that subscribe, the more people that we can reach. So today we're talking about the federal election, and there's a lot of things that we want to take away from that. It obviously was incredibly disappointing to see our most pro-abortion Prime Minister ever actually win government again. That was really disappointing and devastating, I think, for us as a movement. But I also think there were some really important wins. It looks like the Greens have really been neutered in the House of Representatives. That's a wonderful thing. It is very possible that they're going to hold the balance of power in the Senate, which is, again, not a good thing. That's obviously very concerning, but it's very good to see in the House of Representatives that they're losing seats there. So the Greens vote nationally seems to have fallen quite considerably. The Stop the Greens campaign that a lot of groups, including us, ran, Reignite Democracy, Advance Australia, all of these groups, that's been a really positive fruit. But I think the big headline is the fact that Dutton lost so dramatically that it feels like we're now really far behind the Liberals ever forming government again. Now, on the one hand, and you would have noticed this in the campaign, I never released a video supporting Dutton and the Libs. When I released my voter guide, I had to put the Liberals in the pro-abortion category because they're a pro-abortion party. So it wasn't like I was gunning for the Liberals to win. I more wanted Albo to lose because I wanted Labor to be held to account for being so radically pro-abortion. I didn't have any faith that the Liberals were actually going to be pro-life if elected. I just thought it might mitigate the damage that Labor's now going to do in its second term. The reality, however, is there can be a lot of good that comes from this because, in some ways, one way of looking at this is the Liberal Party is so far from its conservative roots that if it had won, it may have received the message, we can just continue along this vein, that we can be Labor light, get away with it, and people are going to vote for us. They could take people like you and me for granted because we vote for them just because they're not as bad as the Labor Party. I think what this loss shows, because it was so dramatic, is that the Liberal parties are really at a moment of existential crisis of who are they? Like, what is that party about? Is it the party of the rich and the intelligentsia and big corporate, or is it the party of working families? Is it the party of Christians? Like, what is it about the Liberal Party that seeks to attract people? So Labor, I think, does a very good job of sort of straddling two lines. It's the party of working people and the unions. That's where it's traditionally come from. It seeks to get the people on the left that care about climate change and the gender issues. So it really tries to do that. But then when it's in Western Sydney and in more conservative seats, it tries to show itself as a moderate centrist party that cares about, your HECS debt. It cares about your mortgage. It cares about your children's schools. And, it actually, in those, for those demographics, it tries to communicate a message that it's on your side. The Liberals, on the other hand, who are they and what do they represent? And this is the question I think that's on right now. So on the one hand, you've got the left wing of the party who are called the so-called moderates. But in reality, the moderates are more left wing than the left of the Labor Party. They virtually are the Greens. And I say this with some knowledge of these people, some close knowledge of these people. The left of the Liberal Party is more concerned about defeating the Conservatives in the party than they are about winning government. And I actually saw this firsthand when I worked with the Liberals last year to introduce the live births bill. I worked with Ben Hood in the South Australian Parliament. It was a bill that banned third trimester abortion. Now, something that happened right early on in that campaign that just astounded me, and it showed me how deep the rot is in that party, was the fact that when I prepared a briefing note with Ben for the party room, it was a briefing note about the live births bill, and Ben had to circulate that to the party room before it could be publicly announced that bill was being introduced. Ben circulated that to the party room, and the leak that came out to the left-wing media and actually to the Labor Party. So get this, pro-abortion lefties in the SA Liberal Party leaked that briefing note to the Labor Party so that they could put it up on X, on Twitter, and they gave it to left-wing media so that they could preempt the announcement that was going to be made about this bill. So that was a prime example of where you see within the party, there are people that are so rampantly pro pro-abortion, people like Michelle Lensing, not that I'm saying she was responsible for the leak, but there were people in her faction who leaked it and who got it out because they were so determined to kill Ben and to kill this bill. That was their goal. It wasn't about the Liberal Party. And the story all became, through the press, was about how there was all this infighting in the Liberal Party, when in fact it was a very small group of embittered, sick, really just desperate lefty liberals, because that faction is now totally on the way out. Thankfully, due to the work of Alex Antic, he's just been incredible at getting ordinary South Australians to join up to the Liberal Party, people that believe in big L values, and so big L liberal values, and who are genuinely conservative and who care about these things. He's done a great job of getting those people to join up. So now the Conservative faction is well and truly the dominant faction in South Australia, but there's still enough of these psychotic lefties in the party to do this kind of damage. And, you know, Alex actually spoke on Sky on Outsiders on Sunday morning, and he gave another example where he said, you know, there was this, kind of scandal media hit piece during the campaign about Alex being anti-Semitic because he'd said one word a few years ago. Now, he wasn't anti-Semitic at all, but when he asked the journalist, like, where did this story come from? The journalist said to him, it came from within your own party. So that tells you that in the Liberal Party, there is such a lack of discipline and there is such a war between the lefties, the so-called moderates, and the Conservatives that they just cannot win government because they're constantly fighting each other. And on X, when I put out a statement saying really the next leaders of this party should be Jacinta Price or Alex Antic. Unfortunately, they're both in the Senate. This commenter got it right when he said anybody that's on the side of Malcolm Turnbull should be excommunicated from the party. I mean, the party either needs to get rid of that left faction or work out a way to have the discipline that the Labor Party has, because the Labor Party has extraordinary discipline when they're campaigning. Yes, they introduce all of these crazy lefty bills on everything from government-assisted suicide to abortion to gay conversion, but the right of the party, the people that actually, are on the side of justice and goodness, they don't speak out because there's just so much crazy discipline. And they're not constantly trying to knife each other in public. They do try to knife each other in private, but they're not doing it in public. And the Liberals just cannot get their shit together on that. They're just not a unified front. What the Liberals need to wake up to is they're never going to be the cool kid in the school. They're never going to win the mainstream media over by trying to lull them into this sort of relationship of, I'm really on your side. The media in this country, and goes the same for in the UK, Canada, the US, the media elites are all on the side of the left. That is the vast majority of people in the media have come up through the universities where they've been pushed a left ideology. They're now working in the media establishment, and they just are never going to be okay with the Liberals. Maybe they like David Christophilou because he's a lefty, or Malcolm Turnbull. But if you're a conservative like Dutton is, as in if you come from the right of the Liberal Party, you're never going to be accepted by the media no matter what you do. And it's like when Trump won the nomination in the US, he just knew I'm never going to get the media, so what I need to do is go on the attack. And he used social media to his advantage by reaching people directly. And when the media attacked him with hit piece after hit piece after hit piece, he attacked back time and time again. Now, you just did not see this from Dutton. Dutton's media performances were woeful. Instead of actually going on the attack with the media, he was just scared of the media. And his own social media was just useless at building connection with people. My advice to the Liberal Party is if you want to win government, you have to dramatically increase your social media game and you need to improve it. And Trump shows us actually how you do that. So there's all this debate about, Dutton was Trump and therefore this shows that Trumpian politics doesn't work in Australia. Dutton was no Trump. Like that is just that is just the most ridiculous post-election analysis I've ever seen. Like, Dutton wasn't a social conservative. He didn't fight on these issues. He didn't, when the UK Supreme Court came out and said, that biological reality matters, that there are two genders, male and female, Dutton gagged. He couldn't speak. He was unable to say that's true and that's the reality and we need to protect women in sport. He just couldn't do it. When he was asked about abortion by Patricia Karvelas, even though previously he has said, I'm against late-term abortion, he just said, well, I support a woman's right to choose. And, I really feel sorry for victims of rape. Like, he was useless. When the misinformation bill, which would have dramatically curtailed our free speech online, was in the parliament, Dutton didn't come out as a free speech warrior. On the issue of religious freedom, he never came out to say, I want to protect Christian schools and the freedom to hire and fire who they choose. He did not stand up on any of those issues that the conservative movement cares about. He was no Trump because he didn't fight. Time and time again, what we saw from Dutton and the Liberals in this campaign is he played by the rules. He accepted the rules of the left-wing media establishment. And that's exactly the opposite of what Trump did. When the media came to Trump and they said, trans people are feeling more suicidal, really disempowered, so upset because of, your statements on gender, Trump just threw that in their faces and said, I'm standing up for women and girls everywhere. He didn't play by the rules. He threw the rules back at them and he communicated really powerfully using social media. Now, he didn't have the celebrities on his side. He didn't have Taylor Swift and all of the A-listers, but he turned that again to his advantage. And I think the thing about the Liberals and Dutton is they're so pathetic. They are honestly so pathetic. And so in the campaign, when the left-wing media approaches Dutton and says, one of your candidates has said that women shouldn't be on the front line. What does Dutton do? Instead of standing by his candidate and having loyalty to that person, he gags them, he removes them from the party, he throws them under the bus because he's just quivering in his boots about whether the left-wing media is going to attack him. Here's a newsflash for Peter Dutton and the Liberals. The left-wing media is always going to attack you. And the lefties on social media, people like Hannah Ferguson from Cheek Media, who's a member of the Greens, Abby Chatfield, who's a member of the Greens, you are never going to win them over. When Hannah Ferguson publishes her stupid mugs and T-shirts, good morning to everyone except Peter Dutton, you just need to accept that as par for the course of fighting the radical left. That is just what's going to happen. You're going to get called names. They're going to try and paint you as this right-wing extremist. But like Trump does, you actually need to see that to your advantage. When Trump got arrested and had this mugshot, they were putting that on T-shirts because, he used that to his advantage. And the thing is, the Liberals just don't know how to do this. They just don't have a good social media game. They don't know how to reach people directly. They don't know how to be authentic in who they are. So they just come across as really masked and phony. And they're never going to win government that way because it's just so unappealing. You don't want to vote for that. And this leads me to my next point, that they just don't have an agenda of their own. They're just reacting to what the left does, but they don't have a forward-thinking, truly conservative agenda that would actually excite people. So what should the Liberal Party stand for? I jotted down a few notes. So the first thing has to be freedom of speech. The Liberal Party should not be restricting or banning speech in this country. So aside from speech that incites violence, and we already have laws around that, and the bar is very high, then Australians should be able to say whatever they damn well want, and Dutton and the Liberals should be on the side of freedom of speech. Secondly, freedom of religion. The fact that the Liberal base is often a conservative Christian base, but it doesn't just have to be Christians, but it should be people of faith, because they've been thrown under the bus by the Labor Party and the Greens are so atheistic that the Liberals should stand up for the freedom to practice your religion, to express your religion, the freedom of conscience, to exercise your conscience according to the values of your religion. Those are authentically democratic principles that the Liberals should stand up for. The rights of parents and protecting children. This should be a value that the Liberal Party should stand up for. Smaller government, so that government's not encroaching on the rights of parents, that parents have autonomy, and that they protect our schools so that it's not just states-run schools. So the Greens, in the campaign, they had these posters which said public, not private schools. And what they really meant was state-run schools. The Greens want all of the kids in this country to go to the schools so that the schools become like the universities. The universities for a long time have been indoctrinating people down a left-wing path. It's almost impossible to be from a perspective that's critical to the left in any of our universities. The Greens and the left of the Labor Party, they want this to be what happens in state schools. And we already know that state schools have been totally captured by the rainbow religion of the Greens. And so that's actually what the Greens want to do. The Liberals need to stand up for that, and they need to say, well, actually, in this country, we should have a diversity of schools, and a diversity of schools should be funded, and parents should be free to send their kids to Jewish schools, to Christian schools, and those schools should have the freedom to hire and fire whoever they want that's authentic to their belief system. The Liberal Party should stand up for small businesses and working families and fundamentally for love of country. We need to stop being ashamed of the fact that we're Australian. We need to proudly celebrate Australia Day, and we need to actually go forth with that, with pride. The Liberal Party has been tying itself into knots about that. And so the thing is, someone like Alex Antic, he has crossed the floor. He's crossed the floor on these issues, but he's been the sole person to do that. Now, he's done a remarkable job in South Australia getting grassroots people, ordinary people, to join the Liberal Party, but that really needs to happen across the country. We are a long way from getting a Liberal Party that is a true Conservative party that can properly take on the radical left. But I believe that this election loss, the good thing that will come out of it is it will be a period of soul searching for the Liberal Party. The one thing that we can all do now is to join that party. So I don't want to tell you what to do. I don't think that's my job. But one thing I will tell you is probably the single biggest impact you can have is to join the Liberal Party. If you join the Labor Party, you're not going to change that, because the Labor Party is just so deeply embedded in abortion, and it's so deeply embedded in the radical left. It just has socialist origins. Emily's List is the underground militia that is the most dominant faction in that party. There's just so much wrong with that party that at this point, in the Labor Party, I have now got to this place, and I didn't always think this. I thought that we could save the Labor Party, but the reality is the Labor Party has just gone so far to the left that it's just impossible. The Liberal Party, on the other hand, is not lost. And what I've seen in South Australia firsthand is that when ordinary South Australians joined the Liberal Party, it allowed us to introduce a live births bill. And yes, it did get sabotaged from the few lefties that remain, but it was allowed to be introduced. It lost by only one vote. And so, if we can achieve that just from Alex Antic, doing what he's done over just the last 2 years, in reality, if people joined the Liberal Party now, they just joined their local branch, they turned up to meetings, they voted pro-life, they voted for the right things, they voted to pre-select really good candidates, not these weak, pathetic, spineless individuals. If they voted to pre-select people like Alex Antic, Jacinta Price and Andrew Hastie, so good people who are strong and who are going to fight, then the Liberal Party itself can change. And maybe this isn't something that we're able to achieve in the next 3 years, but it's something we could start now, and then we would be able to build a genuinely conservative movement in this country. So this has been a very quick run through of why did the Libs lose and what can they do. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. So tell me what you think the Libs need to be doing now to change and to win. And I look forward to seeing you next time on The Dr. Jo Show.